Hello and welcome to the Animation Kimmunication podcast, your source for discussion about animation, film, fandom, and more. So please join your host, I Love Kim Possible a Lot, or KP, and Lauren Kizich, the Abbey Roadie, for today's discussion. If you like what you hear, please remember to support by giving a like, a follow, as well as subscribing to the main I Love Kim Possible a Lot channel on YouTube. Spread the word and keep being a part of a great community. This episode is appropriate for all ages.
Hi everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Animation Kimmunication. We're still doing spooky time, so spooky time technically. So I'm KP. If you're new, with me as usual, I have Lauren, who is here, and then we have my friend Peter, who does things on the internet. Peter, you want to tell people what you do on the internet?
Hello. In years past, my name is PikaPetey. I go by the aliases. For a while, I was basically a cartoon Pikachu, hence the name. Was in doing a lot of work for the pony fandom. Then I got dragged into internet drama with I Hate Everything and Cool Cat, and eventually from there, which kind of one after another led me a job at my actual day job now, where I work in emerging tech. And then that led to me donning on a VR headset, making a Shiba Inu, and now I'm like popular in the furry fandom as a Shiba Inu called the Shiba King. It's really weird.
Can you define a popular? Because people might not know what that is.
Oh god, this sounds so cringe. So it's just popular is when you become a drinking game in the furry fandom, because one of my old coworkers made a series called the Shiba King series on his YouTube, and apparently it is now a drinking game amongst the furry fandom, where every time we say fucking send it, they take a shot. Or something. I don't know what they do. They marathon it. So then when I went to one of these conventions, they saw my name and they're like, "You're the Shiba King!" I'm like, I had no idea this was popular.
So like a popular personality in the furry community, right?
I guess so, yes.
I'm gonna put...
Yeah, it's a play off of popular.
Math is
Yes.
hard. I'm gonna put you in a corner. You wanna explain to people what a furry is for people who don't know?
Oh, yes.
I feel like enough people are here. They know what a furry is. Your internet personalities.
I don't know.
But
if
Despite what the CSI Las Vegas episode would tell you, no, it's not a sex thing. There are those people that do make it a sex thing, but that's a minority. Mostly, it's just one giant costume party, actually. Just go there, have an excuse, get your elaborate robes on or whatever suit is, and go to a hotel and have a convention, and then you drink just tons of alcohol, and it's fun.
Yay, alcohol.
Basically. But other than that, I mean, for me, it's just fun. As just a fun way to do stuff. But other people take it too far. You always have those individuals in the group, any sort of community, that take it too far, and they're just like, "Oh yeah, I love to look at all the furry porn all day, and I am just an underdeveloped human being." Ugh.
So anyway, on a somewhat normal topic, Lauren, ready for some headlines, I guess?
Yeah. Well, first of all, sorry to date this episode a little bit, but hey, today happens to be the 10th anniversary of MLP, Friendship is Magic, of their airing, and also of the Hub Network, apparently. So, which, turned into Discovery Family, so it was good while it lasted. But anyway, so hey, a good day for bronies, former and current, to unite. And also, I wanted to bring up that Pixar's Soul movie is actually going to be coming out on Disney Plus instead of in theaters due to the COVID pandemic. That it's going to be coming out on Disney Plus on December 25th, and with no
Thank God.
surcharge. So go.
Wow.
Yeah, so no going the way of Mulan. Thank goodness. It's a Christmas miracle.
Wow, that's
Literally, it's on
that's a
Christmas.
huge that's huge financial risk, I guess. I don't know. Interesting.
I don't know if enough people, I think, subscribe and actually get Disney Plus. I think enough people will be convinced that they can. I don't know. Maybe it'll encourage more people to get it because then they realize, oh, we don't have to pay extra to watch this. And even then, by then, Mulan will also not have the surcharge. If I
you're
remember
correct.
as well. By December, it'll come with your subscription. So they were only trying to make sure that they were trying to test it out for revenue sake, but it didn't do too hot. But
Well,
anyway,
now we know. But I heard, I think Mulan isn't really that great of a movie anyway, so I guess you can watch it for the lulz, and we'll go from there. Merry Christmas. But yeah, Soul looks good, so I'm excited to see what they do with Soul, and I guess they're hurting financially a lot because I imagine they, with the other news story that we're gonna cover, but if they're willing to put it on. This was not like Mulan where they were just like about to release it and spend all the money on the promotional materials, and they were like, oh wait, this is one that they could have technically held on to until like whenever the hell this is over, but sad for Disney, I guess.
Yeah, so what would you like to discuss of our headlines?
Me or Peter? Okay, give me a second.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts, Peter, so far?
Well, I mean, I have a lot to talk about. Probably your viewers don't even know about the whole thing, landscape that's happening in the VR community, which is really interesting to talk about. If you want to, so basically,
Yeah, go ahead and share.
the major, so companies are still scrambling to get together like expos and conventions and all that stuff. They're really keeping an eye on Facebook bought up Oculus a while back, and they're coming
Mhm.
out with the Quest 2, which it's going to be launched in stores within 3 days on October 13th. That's their flagship standalone headset, but the second version is a little bit more powerful. People like the Quest because you don't have to meddle with wires or cables. It's just really you just put it on, go, connects to your Wi-Fi, and then you could, you don't have to set up any base stations, it's inside out tracking. However, it is Facebook. Facebook owns this thing. And this is where it puts a lot of people, is because in order to know this headset knows where it is in your living space, it uses cameras and tracks your room via the camera system. So now it knows it can start using image recognition to identify whatever's in your room. And you know how Facebook loves the data mine.
Oh boy.
And so they're really pushing to one up their platform, their social platform, by making this all-encompassing VR place called Facebook Horizons, which has a closed early access. You need to get a representative to come and basically guide you around like a tour, like a theme park tour. And it was kind of weird because you go there and the guy's like really over enthusiastic, like, "Hey, welcome to Facebook Horizons. Like, anything can I get you?" I was like, "Yeah, I put together this avatar. That's a great avatar. Finger gun, bang bang." And I'm like, "Okay, cool, but like, can I have like purple skin?" And they're like, "What do you mean? I can get you a purple shirt." I'm like, "No, I want my skin to be purple. I think that'd be kind of cool." And they're like, "No, you can only be human, regular skin tone toes." I was like, "Oh well, okay, I'll just go back to VR chat where I could be like a dog or a can of soup, or even whatever,
can of soup.
whatever I wanted to be." Yeah, you could be you'd be whatever you want. You could be like, "I feel like being a can of soup on the floor today." Poof, you can make an avatar.
Soup.
But so that being said, I've been mostly spending most of my time at VR chat because I feel that the marriage between animating, so you're basically you're basically a cartoon character in real time. So you're combining like actual improv performance with animated assets to put on another show in real time. So it this weird multi-layered element of presenting animation that's never really been done before. It's crazy. Um, and it's all just basically motion capture technology. And it's really funny because I also work in the tech industry. And, in the tech industry, they're still like writing articles like, well, can VR equipment be used to replace, conventions and expos? And it's just like, tech industry, look, like me and, at VR chat, like, the furries got together. They wanted to go to a furry con, so they redid the entirety of the hotel lobby of the hotel in Berlin. So they could have Euro ferns, but they called it virtual ferns. We also had a full body dance competition where the guy who actually won was dancing in his play space, but his avatar was broadcasted. We had a virtual working video board, and the guy who won had a wireless VR with full body tracking and Heelys. So his routine was like a mixture of breakdancing, figure skating, and ballet. Like you can do a convention, tech industry. You could do a convention. We did it.
Or at least
look at what
helping.
we did. And the tech industry looks back and like, well, yeah, I mean that doesn't really count. So why not? Well, because it's not it's not really backed by a big company, and it's it's hobbyist. What we're really interested in is Altspace or Facebook for Horizon. I'm like, God, Jesus Christ. Whatever. Okay, go to your boring Play-Doh sandbox. So yeah, that's what's going on there. It's been pretty crazy. I barely noticed the whole lockdown pandemic because of VR. It's been nuts. Yeah. Yeah. Even though I live like right next to New York City, and then during April when shit was getting real and everyone was scared, I saw like refrigerated trucks leaving the hospitals, and I was just like, yeah, I don't want to be outside. I'm just gonna run back to my living room and be cartoon dog and VR and have a laser tag tournament or Valley's hard. No, but it's been really nice.
I feel like it's
meant
the equivalent of Obi-Wan riding that green screen Obi-Wan riding blissfully in his little speeder while everything is exploding behind it.
Yeah, or it's kind of like, just checking out and jacking into the Matrix.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, there was San Diego or not yeah, no, was it San Diego or New York Comic-Con? Either way, there was teaser footage released and a theme song clip of the new show The Ghost and Molly McGee, which is on Disney Channel, if I recall correctly. If it doesn't get moved to Disney XD or whatever. Um, but yeah, it got released and all over social media, and people are getting really hyped up for it because I feel like we don't get enough ghost show content, not like we used to with like Danny Phantom and stuff like that. So it's cool to see yeah, OG Real Ghostbusters, and every once in a while we get a ghost show, and it's cool to see a revival of the ghost show. But in I guess as far as we can tell, just a more cutesy like sitcom-y kind of format. And yeah, it looks really promising, and the dynamics between the main characters is really cute. So I'm looking forward to this. So yeah, and there's so much good content coming out of Disney TV animation now. It's like, I mean, they always were, but I mean, especially just like in the middle of a pandemic, that everybody's like looking forward to new content.
oh well, I'll tell you this. So, during when everything was shutting down, a lot of Hollywood was just like, oh crap, what do we do? What do we do? Like we can't like film live action things, and then the entire like eye of Sauron of that is Hollywood turned its gaze onto the valley in Burbank and said, Animation Studios, you must carry the weight of entire Hollywood. during this pandemic. And so animation's been booming. Like if I was if I just graduated college, like maybe let's say like, spring of 2019, that would give me like an entire summer of me like really trying to get together and get my stuff together to get into the industry. And then let's say 2020 hit, like all of those people are getting hired. Like it would been as an animator, it was like the perfect time to graduate because you can work at home. Basically, and it's been really nice because all the animators are like, yes, see, animation industry, we can work from home, get our stuff done. We don't need to go to a giant studio and be in this massive, this massive city where the rent is like so ridiculous high. We could still do our jobs working from home. And so just at the beginning, like around April, like every single animation studio, there's a new project, everything was like everyone was being hired. It was crazy.
Yeah. It's like it's just it's crazy to see how much more animated content's coming out, and it's like the best thing ever because now we can be like, hey, to all of you who said cartoons and animation, oh, it's for little kids, it's not important. You can go stick it where the sun don't shine because
What I really loved
kids
watching
animation and adult animation, it's all coming around, and it's saving us from this pandemic.
what I really loved was watching all the industry professionals, be forced to like broadcast out of their home. Like, man, this is hard. And then all of like collectively, all of the YouTubers and Twitch streamers are like, well, allow us to introduce ourselves.
Oh Lord, yeah. I don't really have anything else unless there's more headlines you wanted to talk about, Lauren. Did you want to mention the Disney layoffs or anything?
Well, I mean, now that you mentioned it.
Sorry, I didn't mean to jinx it.
Well, there was unfortunately, I mean, it's kind of sad that we have to end the headlines on more or less a sour note, but yeah, there was the whole layoff of like 28,000 cast members especially due to the California Disney parks being shut down. Meanwhile, all the other Disney parks all over the world have reopened and are doing fine with COVID safety guidelines. And yeah, as far as if I remember this all correctly, Bob Iger has not been happy with Gavin Newsom, who's the governor of California, and he even left the COVID. It was almost like he left like the COVID response board or something for California. He was just like he had it up to here because and I don't blame him. And he's just like, so yeah, so it's yeah, it's a thing that's happened. And on top of that, as a news update as of I guess past day or two, two of the Disney's California shows, which is one was at DCA, which is California Adventure, and the other one's at Disneyland proper, is Mickey and the Magical Map, and the Frozen show that originally replaced the Aladdin show at the Hyperion, are both shut down, at least as far as I can tell, for good. And that sucks because the casts for both shows never got to have that final curtain call. They never got to have their finishing performances. It's all been just it's been rotten, absolutely rotten, and I feel so bad for all the cast members that have gone through this. I've been going through this for months, waiting with bated breath to go back, and it's just it's just awful.
Yeah, now I'm sad. Now that was a bad idea. Okay, on a happier note then.
I do have a little happier headline to try and finish that off. It'll be brief. Okay, so I can try to save this at the very least somewhat related to Disney in a way, by extension. Glenn Keane, who is a Disney legend, Disney animator,
the man,
former Disney animator, who's been cranking out his own original stuff, as of the past several years. He has the musical animated film Over the Moon that is coming out exclusively on Netflix on October 23rd.
Oh wow! I didn't know
And
about
so
that.
far, yeah, and so it'll be good. A lot of reviews are coming in that some people are like, it's like, I like it, so generally positive reviews. But I guess we'll have to see what the general public thinks because, critics can say what they want, but it's up to the viewers to gauge that for themselves. And so I'm personally really looking forward to it. It looks really good based off of the trailers. Like visually, it is stunning, and so colorful and vibrant, and just and plus, I'm a sucker for musicals. So if we can get something like that, yeah, I'm down.
No bias, but like a little bias.
So another news, I got a headline. So speaking of an animator, we all
yeah,
probably have known about Don Hertzfeldt. If you know him from the internet sensation, the Rejected cartoons, and he was an animator back in 2008. He went on tour, which was like really unheard of for an animator to go on tour. It's because he shot all his films in 35 millimeter film camera. He just released. Oh, and he had an Oscar nominee a couple of times, I think, for his short films. Has a couple of Emmys under his belt. Annies. Has a couple of Annies under his belt, which are basically the animation industry's version of Oscars. But yeah, he just released a new film today. It's called what was it called? Something Earth #3. If you have to watch it, you can rent it on Vimeo, of all places. So yeah.
You want to Google what it's called?
Yeah. Let me just
Okay, and then we'll get to the actual like interview part.
It's come on. Sorry about this. The drag down this. Let me just go to my YouTube.
Edit it out. It's fine.
Oh, okay.
Editors, you know what to do.
World of Tomorrow. Episode. Yeah. So his new film is called World of Tomorrow, Episode 3, The Absent Destination of David Prime. It's pretty bizarre, very surreal. Definitely his stuff is like really out there, but it's one of my inspirations.
That's cool.
That's neat.
Yeah, I like that there's a lot more content coming out, and so yeah, it seems almost by the day there seems to be stuff either announced or coming out, so that's awesome.
Happy Horse-iversary. There's like something totally not horse related, like that you can go watch now, today. Yay. So
Horse-iversary.
So anyway, I asked Peter to be here. Yeah, that's what I called because people are like Happy Ponyversary, and I'm just like, no, like we can make this like funnier.
All right, cool.
I said Happy Horse-iversary. I put it on Twitter. It's legit. Anyway, so the reason I invited Peter here because Peter is probably like one of the people in my contacts that knows a lot about traditional animation. Like correct me if I'm wrong, Peter, but you've done like cell shading stuff just for funsies, right? Just to try it.
Yes, I have. And I will stay on this. If the traditional animators of yesteryear before computers had computers, they would have easily thrown those paints away. But yes, I have done traditional, even cell shading animation just to try it once. Terrible process. I can see why the industry was very much willing to switch to computers.
Yeah.
And do you want to describe what cell shading is for people who are like, what is that?
Okay, so depending on how young your listeners are, dial back the dials in time of the clock. So way before the years of where there's digital computers and imagery, and all within film was a chemical process. So the way it would work, you'd have this tape. It's called film. It has this silver nitrate, silver something. There's a silver compound in it, but it's very sensitive to light. It burns. It just goes and flash burns. So put that in a dark box called a camera, stick a lens on it so it could focus the light onto the film, open the shutter, it's burned into the strip of film. That's so whatever the camera sees, that's what it burns on the strip of film. Then you later take it, develop it, and then you could run it through a projector, and bada bing, bada boom, you got enough of them together, you got a movie. So if I were going to make an animation, all right, there are a few ways I could do this. All right, I could draw my character on a sheet of paper, point the camera at it, open up the shutter. That's one frame. Wind the camera up to the next frame. Put another sheet of paper. Draw the character on it. Take a snapshot. The next frame. Then get enough of them together. It's like a giant flip book, and now you have an animated cartoon. But if it's just paper, if I wanted the character to be in a background, like walking down the street or just doing something with the background, I'd have to redraw that background every single frame, and that would be just so much more work than it needs to be done. So how do you get a character to be in front of a background, especially a painted background, so it's all colorful, without you trying to redraw the background every single time? And that's where cells come into play. They are, first, they get their name from, they first use celluloid, a celluloid sheet. If you ever had experience with celluloid, it's very fragile, just completely fragile. Moisture can get to it, it can crinkle. So eventually they turned to some acetone based or plastic, basically. It's like a thick plastic sheet. What you do is you take your ink pen, you ink it on the one side, then you flip it over, and then you could paint with like acrylic paint. Normally it's cheap paint because you're going to go through a lot of it. And you 3 coats of paint of the character's color on the backside. So when you flip it up back around, it looks all clean and nice, and then you can put it in there. And then the background, your nicely painted background, can show through, and you only see the characters. And then you take a snapshot, boom, there's your frame. That's cellular animation. That's where it comes from. And it is just a terrible process. You have to do 3 coats of paint on each frame. There's 24 frames a second, and you have to wear gloves. You have to overmix your paint, because if you run out of paint of that pigment, so help you.
Oh yeah, you're just screwed.
Yeah. And not only that, but if you have multiple layers of this paint, because to save the amount of paint or the amount of frames that it had to draw, let's say you had a character, he's standing still, but only his head is talking, like he's in a pose, and so the head is, you only have to redraw the head. So the celluloid, especially the celluloid, had like a slight tint to it. So in order for it to not look weird, you would have to offset the color of the paint to mismatch, or so it looked correct when it's under another layer of the celluloid on the character. It was nuts. Now you just like go on the computer, hit a color palette, just fill in the line. Even with vector, you don't even have to sit there and draw it in. You can just go bam, and it's colored. It's great. Still, animation still takes a heck of a long time though. But if you look at cartoons from the 1990s, and don't look at Animaniacs. Animaniacs and Freakazoid's like the cream of the crop there. We're talking about like your Joe Schmo budget.
Like Darkwing Duck.
Darkwing Duck would be kind of one. We're talking about like maybe like mid 90s. Dexter's Lab would be definitely one. But if you look at your average cartoons then, and the amount of like times the characters really didn't move, they were very simple movements. And then you look at what the cartoons are coming out with now, it's like the backgrounds are really detailed. The movement is a lot more fluid. You'll notice that the movement in modern day cartoons, mid-tier budget range, are still a lot more fluid than what came out back in the 1990s. It's because a lot of that extra manual grunt work has been cut out of animation for good reason. So we're in a very good time for animated shows that are coming out now, because now we have really nice programs that will automatically fill in some lighting, so you don't have to manually go through and paint in the lighting. You can add like a filter to it, so now when the character's walking through like a forest in the sun, you can have like automatic like shadows of leaves go across them. The programs are getting very, very complicated, and productions are capitalizing on it, which is really cool.
Yeah, that's neat. And how was your what were you animating? Because I remember, but for people who don't, what were you animating in the cell shaded stuff? What were the subjects? Do you remember?
Oh, I was just doing the there was the one shot in the Sea Breeze animation.
Sorry.
When he turns, I made a little My Little Pony Sea Breeze animation. Turns around. It was a take on Dragon Ball. It's like Sea Breeze. What does the scouter say of the power level? It's over 99,000. What? 99,000? And just that shot of him turning around, going, "What? 99,000?" That shot, I think, was all cell frames. And you don't even know. Like, you can't even tell that it was cell frames.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just like, it looks exactly the same as the digital stuff. Why am I doing 12 hours, 24 hours of extra work? This is ludicrous.
Okay, well, that now I guess you know what cell frames are if you didn't know that already. So that's how they used to make animation back like before 2005-ish, right? My math right on that?
Well,
I
before
think
2000 at least, because digital
Foster's
stuff started coming
Home
in.
for Imaginary Friends was like the really hard use of Flash alone. I think that was their big groundbreaking production in Cartoon
Yeah.
Network. So prior to
That and Mucha Lucha.
Mucha Lucha, yeah. So any cartoons prior to that, I know eventually SpongeBob switched over to a digital process, but at the beginning, the first seasons are cell frames. I actually have a few of them.
Yeah, you
Oh,
collect cell
nice.
frames, right?
Yeah,
That's neat.
yeah, I hang them up in my studio wall. It's really nice.
What's the price for a cell? Just a random cell, out of curiosity.
So
Depends on it.
yeah, it depends. So it depends on a number of key things. One, it depends on the production. So obviously any Disney production is going to be monstrously overpriced, you know. So it depends on the production, who was animating that particular shot at the time. So which animator. So if you're getting like, you know, like Don Bluth or Glenn Keane, you know, like, oh, Glenn Keane animated this shot, you know, that's good. That's going to hike up the price, the artist behind it. Also, it depends on if it's a keyframe or if it's an in-between. So if it's a keyframes are basically the drawings that define the scene, all right? Like, you base all of the other drawings based off of this drawing, so it remains consistent. And if it's a keyframe, it's normally really well posed. It doesn't look wonky. You know, it's everything's proportioned properly. That is also really expensive as well. That will hike up the price again. And also, if it's been under the camera, that is also will hike up the price. And also, which characters are in the shot? If you have, like, the only time in the entirety of this film where these two characters are actually in the same shot with each other, and it was animated by their top tier animators, it's a keyframe, and, you know, these can get very pricey. You're talking about now you're getting into the realms of where this is like a, you know, like a fine art piece. Now you're getting into gallery prices, you know, where it's like couple, you know, like 5 digits.
Wow.
This for the single piece. Obviously, I don't have that kind of cash to throw around, so I settle for like Mario Super Show, was the weird in between. That was like $15 on eBay. Because you know, you think about it, when you have 24 or at least bare minimum 12 of these per second. 20-minute cartoon, you're gonna have a lot of cell frames.
Right.
Now, if you go through an entire season, you're gonna have just, you know, thousands, hundreds of thousands of these things just done. Because once they under the camera expose the frame, what do you do with them? A lot of studios at the beginning would just throw them out because they were just gonna take up storage space. It wasn't until I think the 1990s or even like late 80s when they kind of collected together. I was like, wait a minute, we could sell these things. It's like, yeah, I mean, we could, because that would help with the people going out back after hours, because people would literally go to the dumpsters of animation studios and collect the stuff they threw out.
Yeah.
That's
I mean, it's also, you have to consider now, it's like we archive this stuff so much more versus back then, because I guess it just wasn't at the time considered something to really archive, because they're like, well, we shot the film, we got the film, and we can save some of this stuff, but for the most part, I mean, yeah, like, again, to your point, it was a storage thing.
Yeah.
That they didn't really think twice about it. But then people are like, then you got the collectors and the fans and everything that are like, no, but this is cool. And then they go, wait a second. Cha-ching.
Exactly.
okay.
So
Go ahead.
yeah, that's basically how they work. No, that's exactly it. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll backtrack a little bit. So, for those who are listening, we're gonna go in depth as far as like how the animation process works, because we've touched upon it like a little bit, being like, hey, well, you get a bunch of drawings and you put them together, and what do you got? You got an animation, but like for people who are like, but like how? So, I'm hoping that like if you're listening to this episode, you can at least like have an idea of how to like get maybe a traditional animation, or maybe like, a very basic animation done, and like how do you make sure it doesn't suck, and like those kind of questions. So to backtrack a little bit, so Peter mentioned 24 frames per second, and I think that's still the industry standard, right, Peter?
Yeah, that's still the industry standard if you're hand drawing the cartoon. So I know that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that I've been seeing GIFs of on Twitter, which looks really freaking fantastic. That's still, delivered 24 frames per second. You don't necessarily have to draw a new drawing every, 24 times per second. It depends on, how smooth you want to make it. So, but basically, you're just making a giant flip book. It's basically hasn't really changed. You can have the computer help with making some of the in betweens. It normally does a pretty bad job, but it's been getting better. But it's just basically that core fundamentals. You're drawing one frame and then another frame and then another frame. Nice thing about animation is that you don't have to do it within the entirety. Like, you don't have to go frame 1, frame 2, frame 3, frame 4, frame 5. You can go to frame 1 and then frame 10, and then you try to draw frame 5 because that's in the middle of it. Then you have the nice path work of like the in-between drawings you can do. Nowadays we use tablets on a digital computer, but if you don't even have that, you can just get a light box and get printer paper and use that and make a flip book.
Yeah, and what are the this might get too technical, so if it's boring, I'm sorry, but like what are the two types? I know that like there's two types of ways you can punch the paper. Like there's two like cuts as far as the pegs.
Yeah. So obviously when you're gonna make your animation and you stack paper on top of each other, obviously you don't want those papers to wiggle around and move around, and because you want them straight and in a very fixed position. So when you flip back through them, your character's not going to, like, basically have a seizure on its way as it's walking across. It's fixed solid. So there's two ways. There's your standard 3-hole punch, which is just 3 holes. But that, even though it's a 3-hole punch and you could get pegs that are 3-hole, that still allows for a room of error for the pages to wiggle. So then you get the super special punch called the Acme Punch, named after the Looney Tunes. Acme was a joke in the animation industry because it was called Acme for some acronym, but that's why like Wile E. Coyote was ordered from Acme. It was an animator joke, but it was like a circle peg in the middle, and then on the side it was like 2 elongated pegs. And obviously when you get that, it's very special, it's very niche, so obviously the price of that's going to be jacked up. So to get a hole punch like that, it's like $500.
Wow.
It's nuts.
I didn't know
that. Yeah. If you get the paper punch, the hole punch, But it's really nice because you could just, for a studio, if you're a business, you buy that one single punch. And now you can have entire productions be made off of that one punch,
Mm-hmm.
the whole punch. You don't have to go and buy all of your employees a computer, a Wacom Cintiq, and software license seats. I mean, you're talking about it gets up to like $3,000
Right.
per head that you have in the studio.
Mm-hmm.
So if you really want to run a very low budget, very minimalist, with overhead, you can still get that Acme Punch for $500 investment, and then all of your animators now have paper. So
This
so you can just buy copy paper at that point.
yeah, like you can just use printer paper and like call it a day and like flip your stuff.
Yeah.
And then to backtrack a little bit, so like how film works is I think after like 15 frames per second, the shots like of each picture blend together. So it's called the persistence of vision. So it like tricks your brain to make you think this goes with live action too, but it tricks your brain to think that the pictures are moving. So I think
Yes.
the more we get like fancy and stuff, we'll go to more higher and higher bits of a frame rate, just only because it looks smoother. So I think 24 is always the animation standard, and it depends on the production, like what the film standard is. So sometimes it's like 15 if they're like doing something like a little niche. Jump in if I'm wrong, but do you know if live action stuff is also 24 frames? Oh no, I answered the call.
Are we? I heard a Discord thing. Are we still on?
She disconnected.
Oh.
All right, I'm here now.
You
I died. I pressed the wrong button.
Editor,
don't-
cut this.
Don't quote me on this. I don't really know too much about the film industry. I know a lot of productions. If it's a heavy special effects movie like Marvel, you're in front of a lot of green screen and everything like that. It's very action movie. It's easier to composite and key out the green screen if your every single frame is like super, super sharp. So they tend to film at a higher frame rate, and then just flood it with lights. So you get really sharp image every single frame, because you have to think about when the shutter's open on your camera, anything that moves within that time before the shutter closes and goes to the next frame, that's gonna be motion blur. And to deal with motion blur on in like a very heavy compositing shot, very heavy compositing film is a nightmare. So I know a lot of those productions tend to film at a higher frame rate. But I mean, when you get into higher and higher frame rates, you kind of get a diminishing return. So when you get into like animation, let's say, you can start animating at 45 frames a second, 60 frames a second. But when you get up to there, your margin of error that you can get away with gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So when you get up to 60 frames a second, because I can animate something on what's called fours. So every fourth frame on the 24 frames per second basis, there's a new drawing. They do this a lot in anime productions. And so that's why they kind of look more choppy. But because they do less drawings, they get more detailed drawings. So there's a lot more details in the characters from anime shows than there are in American shows, because they can spend the time to add more detail. But so I can animate something like a fours, and it looks really, really good. I was like, wow, that's really good. The motion's there, the white's there, and everything that. Okay, now I'm going to bring it up to what's called twos, which is now I'm going to double the frames. And I could do that. Now, all of my spacing and timing mistakes that I got away with while it's on fours now seem very much more apparent on twos. I was like, ooh, it's kind of wiggles and seems really bad and choppy. And then when I put it on ones, it's almost like a nightmare just to manage all of that vibrating wiggleness, because now my margin of error is so small. When you get up to 60 frames per second, it's ridiculous. And it's, you take a film and you see really smooth 2D animation on 24 frames a second, and then you see like smooth animation on 60 frames seconds. It's just kind of like, I'm not much of a gamer. In my eyes, I'm just like, they kind of look the same. I don't see what
Yeah.
other people are seeing, how it's better. I guess because I've never really gamed that much. It's just like, it's so much more work and so much more pain to go through for just like basically identically looking pieces of artwork.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it makes me think of like when people automatically smooth footage and they put that onto animation, which I've been seeing a lot of that footage lately, just for people that have been proving a point saying how this doesn't work, because it's like the whole illusion of pacing and timing, the way a character carries weight, the impact of, like, let's say if a character gets hit, suddenly that impact is diminished because there's too many frames smoothing it
Mm-hmm.
out. It's like, no, the whole thing is you're supposed the less you do less with more, or you do more with less, I should say. Sorry, because it's because it makes it snappier to have less
Mhm.
frames. If you want something to move fast, you don't put more frames into it. You use less. That's why when you think of a character getting sucker punched in a Looney Tunes cartoon, they often just cheat it with a smear if they're throwing the punch, and it's like, and then they're smacked against the wall within a few frames, rather than 60 of them. So
So I guess that's like, well, why don't you take over some of the questions, Lauren? Because my throat is hurting a little bit. So where do you want to start? Should we do animation
yeah.
principles, or you want to like ask more of the basic questions?
Well, I was gonna say, well, let's move to the principles. So I guess, what would you consider, like, for people who are starting out in animation? There are some, like, the do's and don'ts, and of doing animation, and it's just like we talked about, kind of along the lines of doing, more frames, where that doesn't exactly work, especially when you're doing traditional animation, whether that be digital or on paper.
Okay,
So what do you consider?
I've got
Mhm.
a different take on that. It's There's like about 4 levels. Okay, if you're starting out as an animator, there's
Mhm.
like 4 like chakra gates you need to go through. Basically basically leveling up as an animator. The first the first gate, and this is disregarding drawing, all right? So this implies to 3D animators, stop motion animators, puppeteer animators. This is
Mhm.
disregarding drawing. First gate that you have to go through is the mechanics of animation. Does it move correctly? Does that horse walk like a horse? Does it look like it's walking
Mhm.
like does a horse walk that way? Is that person walking that way? Like, is that a human walk cycle? Is that a horse walk cycle? Is this the way someone jumps? Is this the way someone picks up an object? Does it look correct mechanically?
Mhm.
Um, and then when you got that principle down, and this takes a long time to get down. Don't get me wrong. This is not something you can learn over the weekend. Then the next level of being an animator is the emotion side of it. All right, and the emotion exaggeration. So yes, you know how to make a horse walk, all right, but how do you make an angry horse walk? How do you
Mhm.
exaggerate it so it looks like he's really angry? I'm in the wrong hay patch, and how do you make it where, yes, that person's running, but he's running with glee, with joy. Uh, how do you have it where how do you exaggerate it? A Someone lifting up a box, uh, so it's really heavy. It's a really heavy, and maybe he's lifting it up, and his you see something in his back go out. Like he just pulled his back, and how do you add that emotion element and the timing to it, and as well? It's basically exaggeration. And then the the third level of being an animator is the acting side of it. All right, so you got the mechanics down, you got the emotion and timing down, but is it that character? Is that the way that, let's say, from Incredibles, is that the way that Bob is going to get angry? Is that the way that his hands move? Is this the way, where his eyes are looking? Is he thinking the way that character would think? So now it's more or less so of making it look correctly, but more so like how good of an actor is the animator? Can they get inside the character's skull? Can they make maybe that particular character, their hands are fidgety and they're they're always like picking at their nails or something like that, that level of acting.
Mm-hmm.
And then the fourth chakra gate is when you just become a god and you're like James Baxter or something. I don't know. You do stuff that no other
James
animator can
Baxter.
do.
Yeah, it's basically when you've reached the level where it's like you've gone full Frankenstein and you can you're just
Yeah.
like it lives. So yeah, it's just like I think a lot of it comes down to being rooted in observation, because especially when if you can take in not only stuff that you can research but just watching things in real life.
Do you know about the
That is like
Tetris effect? The
no, please explain.
okay, let me just let me take a water.
Yeah, that's cool.
All right, Tetris effect. So when Tetris first came out, it's actually the psychological phenomenon is named after the game. When Tetris came out, it's basically a game of stacking blocks until they disappear. Well, people have noticed after playing Tetris for a while, they got really good at like packing a car, for like a road trip, or thinking about how these blocks would fit together, and because their brain was always on that mode, and they started noticing that out on the real, it's called the Tetris effect. So you get, once you go full deep dive animation study and you're really trying to learn to be like a feature level animator, you start to get that Tetris effect. So you're watching someone walk down the street, and maybe they're a big heavy set person, and I could walk down the street and watch them walk down and seeing their belly and their shoulders jiggle, and then it's just like, it's jiggling on twos, or this is the way the graph editor would lay out if this was animated with the character. Like my brain automatically does that, which is interesting enough because during this whole COVID thing, I've took up amateur boxing because I found a boxing coach. And because of my animation background, I'm able to see when he shifts his weight in first strike, so I can react faster.
Animation helps you survive in real life, guys.
Yes, animation helps you survive in real life.
Yeah, especially when you catch anticipation of something, or the recoil, the it's just when you catch all of those little physical cues. And again, it all comes down to observation. So once you like look at something and you can catch something enough, then it translates into, hopefully that you translate that into your work, being like,
I'm
I'm
not advocating for animators to go out and get in fights. I mean, let's be honest here. You're not gonna walk out first day, I've read the animator survival guide. I can dodge punches, and then turns out that's a hard lesson to learn. And you punch, oh no.
But yeah, but no, it's like it's so important to kind of just stop and you watch, and you watch a movie and you watch the breakdowns of how something looks convincing, that you can believe, okay, this character is going to go in for a punch, this one, or a character, this is a heavy character, this is how they carry their weight, and this is how they do it with their personality type. And yeah, it's all comes down to like, to just seeing the world around you, and observing how things move, observing physics, observing weight, and it's funny because physics was like my least favorite science. And,
it's a lot less mathy. Animation's a lot less mathy, and more like once you get to a certain animator level, it's less about realistic. It's less about being realistic and more about being believable. So when there's a couple of times, like I'm animating something right now as we speak of this podcast, it's but a character slams his fist down on the counter, and in order for me to make that believable, I literally had his fist compress into like a pancake and then pop back up, and that seems more impactful. Obviously, in
Yeah.
real life, that doesn't happen. You break your hand. But
Mhm.
there is some element to that, because if you ever seen a punch to the face in slow motion, ever watch the slow-mo guys on YouTube, and they always show like
Mhm.
people getting smacked or their hand slapping, you see the hand deforms in ways that you're like, oh man, I didn't even think like the face could deform like that. That's still, it's still there, but it's not as exaggerated in animation. Um, so so it's more about being believable rather than being realistic. So it's also an element
Yeah.
of knowing when to exaggerate and when not to exaggerate.
Yeah. I think that's another thing where I've noticed where you like I personally love Don Bluth's animation, but I noticed that a lot of people seem to think like, oh, it kind of throws me off because he pushes his expressions and physicality way too hard. And I'm like, okay, I see that as a valid criticism, and it is a stylistic choice at the end of the day. Because some people really do like that. Because
There's
there is
there's a couple of things that Don Bluth do that crack me up. Okay, one thing is that he's infatuated with there's always a character in any film just with massive bushy eyebrows. Like the character has this massive eyebrow gang on. It's like, whoa. And there's always a weird, he loves putting the camera inside the mouth of, like, if the character's gonna be eaten, like, oh no. He always has that shot where it's like the camera is inside the throat of the creature, and you see the character battling the tongue and teeth and stuff. And I'm like, Don, do you have a kink that you're unaware of? Like, why is this shot repeatedly in several of your films?
But
Um,
yeah, like, but it's the way he pushes it's like the way he pushes his expressions, in particular. Like, yeah, again, it's the faces. I feel like more than anything, uh, that some people like that and some people don't like that. That they think, oh, it looks like a bunch of overacting. When yes, it can be considered that, and then at the end of the day, but it's still his work. He'll do what he wants with it. So,
yeah.
but yeah, I get why some people would be thrown off by it, because some people go like, I don't know, it just it may be just too much to take in at once and not make it believable. It seems like again, it does seem like overacting to a number of people.
I
So
think it's just people are just so used to Disney, and because every studio was like trying to copy Disney and stuff like that, and
mhm.
then you got this other guy come along and it's like, hey, look at this, I made it my way, and there was like, ew, that's different. We don't like different here.
What is this, an
Like,
artistic
and then there's
field?
also
Yeah, what is this, an artistic field? It's
and
supposed
then
to
there's
be
meanwhile
gray
like
and
Wes.
dull and all the same. Every character must have a bean shape for a head, and this CalArt smile.
Oh God, don't even get us started. Because that was the whole thing that like John Kay started, was the whole CalArts argument. But I mean, how I see it nowadays, it's just like how every phase, there's always different phases of animation in different eras. So everybody's gonna start, like, once one company or production company starts doing it a certain way, everybody else wants to cash in on what's successful, so
Interesting
they'll start
enough,
doing the same
though. Yeah,
style.
we could talk about that. So in the 1980s, all right, animation industry and a lot of productions, their job was to sell toys.
Hmm.
Um, and Hasbro was really good at that, and that's why a lot of designs in the 1980s, like He-Man, Transformers, My Little Pony, it's really kind of chunky and blocky because the cheap toys, you just have plastic injected mold, so it was really angular and very had to look like the toy. They designed the toy first and make the cartoon on it later. That's why He-Man is such a weird show, because they just had a whole bunch of leftover designs they just cobbled together into a show. And they're picking them up, like, okay, well, obviously the guy with the skull is obviously the bad guy, and just kind of going through them. Nowadays, it seems like animations are designed to be on a T-shirt or a plushie doll, like cute
Hmm.
little plush doll. So if you're gonna push merchandise, which still is a big defining proponent of whether or not a show is going to last or not.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason why SpongeBob is still around is because good God, is it a cash cow? Think about all the
Mhm.
SpongeBob bath products you can think of. SpongeBob beach towel, SpongeBob, sand bucket, SpongeBob. He just sells. Whereas like a weird show like Samurai Jack, let's say,
Mhm.
it's not really much you can sell of Samurai Jack and merchandise. And ironically enough, the biggest cash cow of all of animation productions is what all animation productions are getting to, is ironically on ice. If you can get your show to the point where you have an on ice featurette that people actually attend, oh my God, that is going to propel your show's budget to the sky. Because think about it, $70 per head. They normally, you have a family of 4 go there. Kids want some merchandise or slushy. The venues are normally really cheap to rent because they're just ice rinks.
Mhm.
Normally out in the middle of not really downtown metropolitan area, but it's more like kind of like in a smaller city. So like, so that's
Yeah.
like the only entertainment for those people all around. And it's a $1 billion industry. It's almost all
Yeah.
profits. It's crazy. When I found this out, I was like, "What? Really? Like
Yeah,
all
the
of
moment
these
you got
shows on this station are basically funded by their on ice SpongeBob show? What?"
Yeah, you would think about, like, all the on ice or the live stage shows. Yeah, it's, like, anything that's, like, live performance, because then it's like, okay, the kids wanna go see them in person. That is the huge seller, because it's, like, it's not going to the theme park or whatever if they can't be at a theme park. It's going to an arena, it's going
And you
to a
don't,
theater,
yeah,
it's
theme
going
park
to an
you
ice
have a
rink, it's going to that.
tons a theme park, you have tons of overhead. You have maintenance, you have the staffing, you have
Mhm,
the cleanliness, the hygiene, everything like that. With an
mhm,
on ice show, you have your staff. They're paid salary based, and normally to be an on ice show, you don't really have training. They kind of go and pick up basically former Olympic figure skaters or just anybody who was in that business. They pick up people who already know how to figure skate,
mhm.
and they pay them a salary, and you just travel around with them. They have their travel trailers or whatever. So you don't really have to pay it, especially if you own the equipment that they're traveling around in. And then you just rent out a venue, and then you're just raking in $70 per head that attends these shows. It's crazy. Do 3 shows a day. My God, that's tons of money.
Yeah, and then at the end of the day, it's all rooted in, uh, in the show or in the property, whatever it is that is gonna be it's those characters were, yeah, specifically designed, uh, some of them are just specifically designed to make money as merchandise and stuff like that, a lot of them are. Uh,
Yeah.
and also when you think about it because they gotta crank out a ton of material, nowadays, designs are a lot more simple because if you have a million people working on a show and overseas, they gotta make sure that everybody can draw or they can model or they can animate all the same way, so it's gonna be so they gotta make sure that things are simple enough that, multiple people it can go through multiple people's hands or across all their computers, and it'll all look seamless. Um, and in the end, it does make for easier to create merchandise.
I'm
Mhm.
just thinking about
Yeah.
all this now. That's a lot. Like we need to start our own on ice
It's
It's
show.
it's all merchandising.
merchandise. It's a huge machine. And I'm happy that the industry and the tool sets are getting cheaper, uh, where people can work from home, and you have animators like VisiPop,
Mhm,
independent animators able to self-fund their own very, very professional looking productions.
mhm.
Basically form a company, and that's allowable. Like that's doable now. And 'cause back then, for the internet, having your own base studio and having a production of that caliber in the independent animation field was just, you were just ludicrous. Like you're gonna make a pilot episode. It's gonna have what? Wait, these designs with like this character alone has spots, gradients, and hash marks.
Mm-hmm.
What are you thinking?
That's what I
But
think of frame by frame. I'm just like, you have to maintain a gradient frame by frame, or this
oh, no.
an obscene amount of spots or stripes frame by
God,
frame.
it's terrible.
It's
Chester Cheetah to traditionally animate Chester Cheetah for Cheetos commercials was like probably the worst experience I've had to just draw all of those spots, and you have to draw it correctly because otherwise it look like spots are dancing around his body if he moves, and that's
Mhm.
really not, it's not a good
He's
look.
He's got the chicken
yeah.
pox.
Chicken pox. No, it's more like a mat of bugs and fleas crawling all over him every
yeah, because
frame.
they're
That's what it
always
would look like.
moving.
Just make them different colors so it looks like a disco ball.
Do you want that's how you get animators to cry.
Yeah, and I guess it could technically, like, it segues into with those fundamentals and understanding animation. I guess I as a personal question to you, do you prefer key poses or animating straight ahead, or do you say just call it depending on the process, I guess, and depending on the character?
Well, first off, you should do your research. So prior to you animating anything, you should get some reference footage, or even just kind of like act out with like even hand puppets what you kind of want the timing to be like.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then it depends on the shot. So if it's a very dialogue heavy character standing there, obviously you want your key poses. If it's going to be like a very heavy body mechanics shot where the character's running from platform to platform, swinging, dodging a punch, or just, like a really actiony type shot, straight ahead on your roughs seem to do a lot better than trying to key pose your roughs. But
Mhm.
this is after when you've done all of your research.
Right.
And you kind of know when things are going to happen. And I say roughs because you're obviously going to have to redo and rework it and clean it up afterwards. That's the mistake that a lot of new animators make. People try to get in animations. They look at the final, because all you see in cartoons are the final product. They don't see the production that goes underneath it. So when you
Mhm.
start to animate a shot, you want to get the motion done as quickly as possible with keyframes. Or not keyframes, but with stick figures. Basically, just rough it out, just get the motion right, because you want to get the character to move right, just to feel right. Don't worry about if the character's on model, which means it looks like it's drawn by the same person. That's what it's called, on model. Then after you get the motion right, then you can lay in another layer or another sheet of paper on top of the paper, and then you can focus, okay, now we got to put the character on model, and I'll meticulously spend that extra time per frame so it looks all pretty. It's a nice, pretty drawing. And that's basic. That's a step that a lot of new animators don't do. And that's why their animations kind of tend up to look really stiff.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
they turn their head and raise the paw, and at the same time, and it looks really robotic. Or I've seen new animators, they draw the character, but then any part that they moves on the character, they try to like erase just that part, and then redraw the arm with it moving down, which doesn't really work, because now just the only part of that character that's like the line is wiggling is like this redrawn arm that just looks really bad. Because when you do that, you're limited to only that arm moving outside of the character's space, and you're also forgetting like anatomy. Sometimes when you move the arm down, the elbow and the shoulder have to rotate as well, but they're not doing that, so it just looks like a disjointed thing that's just kind of going down from them. It's better just to redraw the entire character, because every part of the body pulls on other parts of the body. That's why when you like, if you hurt your back, your leg also aches because your like leg muscles are pulling on your back muscles, and
Mm-hmm.
everything affects everything else. So
Well, it's
that's
also good to understand anatomy too.
yeah, it's
Because
anatomy.
then
Yeah.
it's just, yeah. Well, don't be afraid of figure drawing, people, because then you get how everything
No, like,
connects.
please figure
especially when you
draw
have to build it
before
up.
you animate. I mean, you can do both,
Don't be
but
don't be scared of figure drawing classes. I know when I went into college, I think it was my freshman year, I'd already taken figure drawing classes years before that. And so I'm just remember seeing a whole bunch of my fellow animator classmen kind of like shaking like leaves outside the classroom. I'm like, guys, there's nothing to be worried about. They're not gonna, the naked model isn't gonna leap at you or something. Just like, it's gonna be fine. It's just to study. That's what they're paid to do, is to just pose so you can understand from the ground up. And it's not just to study the form from an external point of view, but when you take those classes, you have to understand the muscle build and how everything connects underneath the skin and how the bones all connect. It's like it all leads up to, when you animate, that it is convincing and that
Yeah.
you understand and make it, like you said, make it believable. Doesn't have to be accurate, just believable. And even then you have to root that in observing real things and saying like, okay, well, that's why I think of like, to bring it back to the Incredibles, when Mr. Incredible, he throws the what was it, the Omnidroid, he throws it into into the lava pit, and he laughs and he throws his back out. And so it's just thinking about that, where it is exaggerated movement, but to sell something that is very real, and having to know, okay, he'd have to twist himself in that way, and you'd have to pose him like gripping a certain part of his back where he would have thrown it out. But that's what it's like. I always think of like, something like, throwing out your back. It's a good reference point, saying like, okay, where's the pain?
Yeah.
and then you can brag to all your friends that you saw a naked girl. You don't have to tell them the context.
Please don't make it
mean-
a bragging point. You can say
What I always
It's for-
find interesting about life drawing, kind of also makes you jaded, because like you draw like, let's say comic book style superheroes all day, and it's just like you try to make the most fit, most attractive looking people, because they're superheroes, and so almost like everyone wants to do that over and over again. So if you get like a nice young fit attractive person in front of you, you're just like, oh, okay, well, just going through the motions again. But then you get someone who's just like old and like has a lot of life on them, and you're just like, oh man, wait, where did they get that scar on that leg? Like, what's the story behind that? And oh man, look at the way the skin sags over here. Like, oh, this is really much more interesting to draw than a very fit, attractive person.
Yeah, I remember I had one of my figure drawing models I had ages ago was actually the model they used for modeling Shrek. So I mean, he was a bigger guy, and he was also used to model like other, like he was used to model mythical creatures like giants and ogres and stuff like
Oh
other
my.
things like that for like video games and movies and Lord of the Rings and all
Nice.
that kind of stuff. So he was super super cool. But he was just like and what was great, he just loved the dramatics. So he would just the best dramatic poses. And it just made
that
for the
stuff
best
is
scenarios.
so hard to
And they have to
yourself
hold
in
that pose.
Yeah.
But he loved it. And it was, and that's why variety of not just poses, but a variety of the body shapes, like to your point. That makes for a much more interesting end product, be it animated or not. That's why character design, it's so important now, especially in seeing that variety nowadays and seeing how shapes are. That's why I love Steven Silver stuff, especially because he seemed to like, there was a lot of that laying out the shapes, and then Andy Tartakovsky for for laying out different shapes and dynamic shapes for character structure and character buildup, and to how that tells a story, and how you can
Yeah.
utilize those shapes when you're animating the character to tell their story, or to tell the audience how they feel, what they're reacting to, and just having fun with it, not having to just, again, making it believable.
Of course.
But it's all rooted in figure drawing, people, so don't be afraid of it.
Well, if it was a cartoon penis, it could, you know. It's imagine the thing.
Nothing's
It's
stopping
like,
you there.
"Arr, arr, arr." It's- yeah, but that's the nice thing about animation. You especially if you're thinking about it as a career, it's the older I get, while still animating, it's just so much more fun. I have the mindset of, basically, I just have to have the mindset of a perpetual 12-year-old and think of like the craziest, wackiest things. And the more people my age that have gone into like business jobs just become so much more boring, because like, and I've got a client right here working for, and I have to make a character eat, oh, they accidentally eat soap in these muffins, and now the joke is that they vomit out a whole bunch of soap bubbles and rock it backwards, and I have to think about, how does that look? You know, how does that actually like functions, and you know, how I'm going to make that funny, and that's just concepts and ideas that and challenges you don't get in any other job, which is it's hilarious.
Just think of Mentos and Coke, but like in person.
Yeah, like out of their mouth, you know, and how's their eyes bugging out. Yeah, so it's really,
I
it's
guess
really fun.
that does, I guess, come down to that could be categorized as advice. What other advice might you have for anybody that wants to get into this field or is in this field and just is kind of like, okay, now I'm here, but now what?
So, and you know, this is a good part to leave off of. So, I was when I graduated college, and I was very dead set on being an animator at such and such studio and being like the people I look up to. It took me a while to realize that those people that I look up to and those positions I want to be in, those jobs are already taken by those people. Like, you're not, you know, unless one of them leaves or something changes within the company, of that company, those jobs aren't going to open up. So, and in trying to force yourself into a peg of, I want to do, you know, oh, I must do this to get this job, or I must do this because that's what the industry wants, it's really just going to burn you out. It's really only when I threw my hands up in the air and said, fuck it, I want to animate a Pikachu slapping his butt to Gundam style because, you know, I think that shit's hilarious, and let's go. And that's, at that point, that's when my career started to take off, is when I just did the stuff that I wanted to do because I just wanted to do them. And that's when you yourself as an artist are going to shine through. I'm not copying anybody. I make stuff because I think the world needs to see this thing that I think is going to be cool at the end. And that's really the only reason why I've made it. And that's passion, and that just drive that I just, you know, just go forth and tackle every obstacle. That's really just been what's been keeping me employed and having a career. That's really it. Because people, if you just exude that passion and you just be an honest person and you just really love to do all the stuff, people pick up on it.
Give me money.
And they just gravitate towards you. That's really just all it is. Like, I wanted to make a, you know, I had, let's circle back to the VR stuff. And I went, I really love this VR platform, but I don't see any really good animated models on here. So I want to make a, you know, a model that I want to see where I can push the boundaries of the expressions on the character, and make it look like, you know, they're actually talking to like a Disney character or something like that, you know, given the limitations. So I did that. I made a Shiba Inu model, and and I did it because I wanted to, and then people like gravitate towards that, and now I have this entire Shiba community on the Metasphere, um, and then I was just like, man, I really want to get in shape. Let's, and then I saw on a freaking um, uh, Telegram chat, this guy was like, hey, I teach boxing. Anybody want to learn boxing? I was like, yes, do it. I I just don't say no. And now I'm doing that. It's that passion just has been carrying me.
Yeah,
And
at the end of the day, you gotta love what you do.
yeah,
It and people will follow soon after. I guess if you build it, they will come. Sorta. So
kind of.
it's in a way, if you build it and you are passionate about it, that there is somebody out there who will see it and they will also like it, and then it's kind of the domino effect.
Yeah, and then
Um,
the people, if you're really passionate about it and you find other people that are passionate about the same thing you're passionate about, and then next thing you know, you have several, network contacts under your belt, or just in your roster who are now your friends, and
mhm.
and uh and without ever going to a con and handing out business cards, "Will you please, hi, I just graduated college. I don't know you know me, but I've been a huge fan of your work. And can I, here's my business card." I mean, that person's gonna, okay, great, yeah. I don't know you or your work. I don't even know how your work ethic is. But what's gotten you will get you hired is like one of your friends getting a job at the let's say at some place, and then their supervisor walks in and goes like, "Hey, we got any new positions? Does anybody here know of someone looking?" And your friend could, if they're a really good friend, they're like, "Oh yeah, my friend over here, he's piped up. I can vouch for him. He's really good." And that's going to carry you more than, getting you out there and going to these cons and handing out business cards. I've never once,
Mhm.
like, quote unquote, networked, like, went out networking, quote unquote. It's always just been, I've been doing my thing and I love doing my thing, and I just meet people along the way.
Yeah. The best connections have come from like just that's why sometimes when I even go to conventions or even just to social gatherings, I first start the conversation literally just by getting to know the person on like on what they're interested in and stuff like that. And then sometimes just my name comes after. And so that way it doesn't come across as like here I am so and so. This is what I do. Here's my card. It's like, "Oh, what are you talking?" It's like, "So what are you talking about?" And then it's just like, "Oh, you're talking about this show? I love that show too. Don't you love the character designs on it and stuff?" And so yeah, you get into that and then you go, "By the way, I'm." So it's just kind of like that way. It
I
seems
have
it
gotten
is
that
a
experience
more
when
natural way
I
for
when
me to
I
get.
do go to do the cons, like fan cons or whatever. I do try to make that a little easier by wearing a shirt with my logo on it, because that's what
Mm-hmm.
people identify me with. But there's been, even then, plenty of times I've been walking elevator, someone sees my shirt, points to it, they're like, "Oh man, dude, I love that animator's like work. Like, where did he has a merchandise store? Where did you get that shirt?" And I'm like, I made it. I'm that animator guy." And they're like, "No, no way, no." And I'm like, "Yeah, hello."
That's my favorite
And
is
then
when it seems almost unbelievable. Like, okay, I'll believe meeting Brad Pitt, but I can't believe I'm meeting PikaPetey.
yeah, not just some dude. No. But it's fun. No, normally after going to place, they're like, "Oh man," because cons are great because you meet those type of people, and they're just like, "Oh man, well, I was just having to go up to a room party. Do you want to come?" I'm like, "Hells yeah, let's go room party."
Yeah, I mean, it's really nice to be able to like actually go into the process and talk about just like the building blocks of animation because hey, it all has to come from somewhere, and it's good to know where that comes from, especially from someone as well seasoned as Peter here. So I'm really and plus I followed your work for a long time, so it was really cool to have you on today.
Oh yeah, it's been an excellent time. All right, cool. Yeah, thanks for having me on board.
And
Good guy.
I was gonna say, where can people find you if they aren't already following you?
Um, so I mean, they can find me on YouTube and watch my animations. but I've been mostly doing work for other people since every time I sit down and do my own stuff, I'm always just like, they definitely find me on VR chat, but most of the time, to keep in contact with what's going on, Twitter is basically the only place. Twitter and YouTube. My Twitter is Peter J. Casey because I made a typo when I first signed up for Twitter. Upon realizing it, I tried to change it to Peter J. Casey, but that account was already taken by another Peter J. Casey. And I'm like, wait, you're Peter J. Casey? And I'm Peter J. Casey too. And then turns out he's a really cool guy. And so we talk every now and then. But yeah, YouTube, PikaPetey animations, and then you see me, an orange Shiba Inu roaming around on VR chat if you ever get on late night East Coast time. I normally get on around 11 o'clock, 10. It's kind of fun time to wind down. I don't have a TV. I don't have any Netflix or TV. That's my entertainment.
Late night Shiva parties.
Late night Shiba parties.
We did it.
Woo!
All right, and then I'll just make an announcement because I'm gonna forget. So we're doing a Halloween stream, the Friday before Halloween. We haven't finalized the date and times yet, but if you guys, we might do charity stuff or we might just like chill. I'm not sure. It depends on what we can get away with tech wise, because like we don't know what the fuck we're doing during the time. Welcome to the KP website. Yay. So if you're bored and want to spend Friday night with Lauren and I and our fun cast of characters, depending on like who we get and what we're doing, then it will be like probably around like evening time, East Coast ish, where you can wear your costume. I'm sure Lauren will be on camera. I might, because I don't know. I don't have a costume. I'm lame, but Lauren can show off. Lauren can be both my costume since she is too, so it's fine. Yeah. So see you guys then, and make sure you subscribe to the places and watch the main channel content, because like we're gaining subscribers, but I'm like, part of that is watching the videos. Guys, please watch the videos when they come out. I don't know, Lauren, any other final closing thoughts?
I don't really have any closing thoughts. It's like, be kind.
See you next time.
See you next time. Be kind to each other. Be kind to yourself. If that doesn't sound sappy, I don't know what it
Eat some chocolate.
Eat some,
but not in excess.
Eat some dark chocolate. It has antioxidants in it. Keep you healthy.
All right. Good night, everyone. Good night, everybody.
Night, everybody.
Good night.
Okay.
Thank you so much for listening to Animation Communication on YouTube, Spotify, or your favorite podcast provider. We are really hoping this show makes a difference in how people view animation and media, as well as giving and providing advice for people all over the world who like or want to join the animation or media industry. If you liked what you heard, please remember to subscribe and rate those 5 stars, as well as tell your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our main YouTube channel, I Love Kim Possible a Lot, and turn those notifications on. My name is Scribbler, and you have been listening to Animation Kimmunication.